Hello and welcome. In my video, A Fat Manifesto, I asked the question, do we live in two worlds? And the example I gave was on YouTube, you see videos of women like this talking about weight loss, next to videos of women like this who are beloved. There are two standards of beauty, but instead of peacefully coexisting, this one is invasive and tries to put this one out of business. Supersized comedian Susan Jones is a successful, popular woman who makes a living using her own weight as her material. Here's a clip.
How you doing, Portland? Maxing out the comedian, I'm the stripper for the birthday party tonight. Sir, is it your birthday? Stand there, I can give you a lap dance from here. You guys aren't safe back there either. Oh, that's an odd table. How you doing? She's with him. That means you're available. Are you a chubby chaser? That's awesome, because I don't run very fast. My fiance's a big guy, just got engaged to be married. That's some Microsoft money right there. Got a good work. He's 10 years younger than me, which makes me a cougar. But I eat my young.
Did you see how she turned something that started as a joke into a glimpse of her very successful relationship with a younger man? This breaks down barriers of perception. And yet in her routine, she talks about her personal trainer, who is one of these diminutive women who weigh less than 100 pounds because they're only 5 feet tall. Women like this have become spokesmodels for physical fitness, as if they're an example of the transformation they're promoting, when in fact they're an example of human diversity, sort of like a Chihuahua is for dogs. I don't know what example this sets. Maybe that you can force a round peg to fit in a square hole. You might recall the 88-pound woman who used to attend every talk show on size acceptance and berate the guests from the audience. If she had followed her example all her life, she probably wouldn't have a career. So I'd like to ask, which of these two women contributes more to society by being the way she is? Then I'd like to suggest it should be the same. She is accepted for being small, she is accepted for being big. Another example of a contradiction would be on Facebook, someone who is an avid watcher of one kind of animal hacks another kind of animal to death in their garden and proudly posts a photo of its body. I was horrified to see this in my newsfeed. The double standard of beauty is like this. Some people view certain women as birds, and other people view them as snakes, which is to say they're viewed in ignorance. I'm drawing this analogy because I've seen people of all stripes try to give rational explanations for their view of snakes, despite their being much more beautiful and necessary than, say, dogs. And also because people have killed a snake and then said to me, I know you like them, but whether I like something is not the reason for keeping it around. When it's socially acceptable to promote or abuse one animal over another, that's not conservation. So size acceptance is the conservation of beauty. Beauty has value because when someone thinks you're beautiful, that has value. And this doesn't mean what one person thinks is attractive is the standard. Here's an example. If there are women with fashion blogs and tutorials who, just by being the way they are, defy convention, raise absolute Cain, and earn thousands of followers who want their advice, even if they aren't this way by choice or aren't completely without insecurities, it raises the question, why does plus-size fashion try to conceal and downplay certain flaws in the first place? If these women are turning heads and getting respect, what purpose does it serve? And women start to wonder, by trying to look thin, am I promoting my looks or someone else's? Does representing pride and beauty require you to think what makes you different from thin women is ugly? Or is it a holdover from those who think there should be no plus-size market? The same reason a 180-pound model is chosen over a 200-pound model, or someone gives them a sneer or a backhanded remark. And when women aren't satisfied with this, it changes that industry. Then a woman thinks, if I did all this with just my photos and writings, what if I didn't want to change anything about myself? What if I was like that photo, where only my good thoughts about myself come through? If all of this results from one woman accepting herself when there is no profit to be gained and all kinds of flack and risks come with it, that is the definition of beauty. It has happened solely because she is beautiful. These contradictions affect us all because they are an abridgment of the facts. The problem of propaganda is much greater than rudeness or bad behavior, and that propaganda is called wellness or betterment. Everywhere you look, there's increased pressure to live a one-world lifestyle. Be happy doing certain things. Make your priorities the same as everyone else's. And these attempts become more invasive every day. If our physical responsibilities are just a given, then our financial and social responsibilities are a given. Hence the phrase, being financially fit. In my county, every employee receives a wellness newsletter that motivates you to do certain things, and if you run or hike or cycle a certain distance, you earn points. And this is printed out and left on the desk for people to read. Well, I'm in good health, but I do those things because there's a destination, like an incredible view or a rare plant at the end of them. If someone thinks it would benefit me to do something, they can make a case for it. Don't tell me you'll give me points for doing it. I'm glad to see runners and hikers going by. If everyone was looking for rocks, there'd be none left. But if I went to natural areas just to move around in a circle, I wouldn't know what I know. Imagine if someone was telling people, you find a wall to climb. You go run in a circle. Their intentions would be a mystery. They might figure, if I can get them to do that, maybe I can get them to do other things. There are videos promoting a prescribed lifestyle that views us as cogs in a social machine, saying we have to keep moving or it costs society more. And people are posting that we don't really have rights as individuals, and others are believing it. If we follow this formula, we might be giving someone license to get the better of us. Because choices are still being made, it's just happening above our heads. Don't judge yourself based on a formula meant for someone else. Go to the authority on you that rewards you for being unique. There are many ways to deal with this. One is to fight negative propaganda with positive propaganda. Catchphrases can be countered with other catchphrases, bad images with good images. Another is taking the high road and refusing to engage in propaganda. When I make these videos, there's a long process of boiling them down so they're nothing but facts. But I think we should be skilled in both, depending on whether you want your message to be a discussion or an advertisement. The conversations about size acceptance you see on talk shows and interviews, where people who are simply sharing how they feel about themselves go up against someone who bombards them with a medical dissertation, is what happens in private conversation every day. But has the impact of these programs come about because of what was said, or is it more important that they are seen saying it? People need to see large women exactly as they are on the screen for as much airtime as possible. Not raising issues, but doing ordinary things like reporting and acting and modeling because their presence is not an issue or a novelty. It's just normal. And likewise, do the antagonists booked for these shows dispense their facts because they want to discuss it, or are they checking it off their list that they spoke against it? There is evidence I'll cite at the end of this video that these TV interviews only exist because fat shaming and humiliation brings in money for the network. Let's divide the arguments against size acceptance into three categories: the good, the bad, and the ugly. An example of a good argument would be the fact that I am not a big person, so I don't know what it's like. That's a fact I can't change. Writers can expose whatever subject they choose. I'm not a doctor dispensing alternative medicine if I want to expose bias in that profession. Pointing out my own limits is a requirement of being objective. I also think there's a need to hear size acceptance from men, especially thin men, so people can't say it's just self-promotion or women's lib. A bad argument is a poor argument. It's not mean-spirited, it just doesn't explain itself or give the merits behind it. Dr. Phil, in his recent appearance on Steve Harvey's show, had this to say about New Year's resolutions. If you're trying to lose weight, you got to program yourself. It's all about your environment and setting yourself up for success. If you want to be successful, you got to have a plan. Program yourself and set your environment up to support you. You got to have people around you who are willing to hold you accountable. If I wasn't accustomed to hearing about weight loss all the time, I wouldn't know what this means. So what if we insert some other buzzword in its place? Let's say entropy. Do you want entropy? We can help you achieve your goal. Does it seem like something's missing? Basically, the motivations to lose weight are based on things like rude behavior, a brutal fashion industry, and self-esteem issues. So advice that says, "So you already want to lose weight?" cites all these medical facts to support motives that are not based on fact, but things like peer pressure. It's like the health industry is a place where a bully stands outside the door making people go in, and then a doctor is waiting inside. And that makes these journals no different from Woman's Day. It's not the desire for health that makes it wrong, and this criticism is not a fight against health, but against slander, things that aren't true. Take, for example, the claims that fiber is a nutrient. Fiber is something the body can't digest, like wood chips. Its nutritional value is 0. Now, it's necessary for keeping things moving so we don't get backed up. But someone who has been trained to believe calories are bad and overabundant might start to wish they didn't have to eat, that this desire is wrong and should be resisted. If you must eat, eat nothing. Eat empty space or a pill that makes you feel full. Something that counteracts what you ingest and fools your body is more important than getting nourishment. Let's call this philosophy anti-nutrition. The science of nutrition was developed during times of starvation and malnourishment, and in some parts of the world still is. I'm not saying the abundance of sugars and calories in our diet is untrue. I'm saying a nutritionist in Somalia is not someone hired by celebrities who want to look thin. It's not the same profession. And nutritionists have been fighting amongst themselves. You have to reduce your intake. No, it's your trace metals. No, it's triglycerides, since the beginning of dieting. An ugly argument is one that's unnecessarily crude or spiteful. I'd rather not give examples of these, but StopEatingYou'reTooFat.com and videos called I hate it when fat people blank should just be called I hate. I had intended to read some comments from different viewers, but instead I'm going to share a discussion I had with one viewer who asked me not to post clips of her because it covers a lot of material. This person posted a video criticizing someone whose channel is similar to mine, inviting people to respond, and here's what transpired. I was typing out a response in the comments section when I realized it was too long, and I also think videos are more courteous. And when talking about certain things, we have to be courteous. I think your life is your own business. Without BBW models and blogs and journals, we men would know nothing. I would never come up to a woman on the street and try to impose. It doesn't matter to me how much you lose, and yet I still felt compelled to post because I believe I can answer your question, what is the conflict? Her response to this was, you say you wouldn't go up to a woman on the street and try to impose your views about not losing weight on her, yet you feel perfectly fine about getting on the internet and telling someone you'll never meet, trying to impose your views on me and telling me that I'm wrong for trying to lose weight or any other woman is wrong, so what's the difference there? Why is it that you think it's not okay to go up to a woman on the street, but you think it's perfectly fine to get on the internet and try to impose your views on her? Women on the street didn't ask for it. She then says, you, as a man, as a thin man, admitted that you have not had to experience the anguish and suffering that fat women go through. And you're absolutely right, you haven't. You don't know what it's like to live in a fat woman's body. You can only surmise. You can only be theoretical about it. So you're not really qualified to talk about it from a fully enlightened perspective. whereas I am a fat woman, and I can tell you that my life as a fat woman has been extremely difficult, both emotionally and physically. And I would hope that people would listen to me a little bit harder than they would listen to somebody who's talking from a theoretical perspective. I do not try to convince people to accept themselves because of my personal attraction to them. I'm a married man. I don't talk to other women. It's not a visceral response. I do it because I believe in our cause, which is to fight that negative influence. I want women everywhere to feel good about themselves. Many BBWs say, "This is who I am, accept it," as a retaliation against the belief that we are not what we look like. That some parts of us are excess, which comes with judgment. Without this, what is size acceptance? You also said BBWs don't exist just to please men. Do you think men in this movement are just looking to get laid? She says, "You said, do I think men in this movement are just looking to get laid?" Well, here's my answer to that. Yes, I do. A huge number, I would venture to say the vast majority, of so-called fat admirers are simply there just looking to get laid. I have heard countless stories, and I have seen it countless times. A lot of these men, I'm not saying all of them, there are quite a few men who do work very diligently and very sincerely for fat women's rights and who speak up for them and defend them against people who abuse them. But a lot of men are just looking for sex. And a lot of fat women are very easy targets. They have low self-esteem, and they don't have a lot of choices. I've heard a lot about these parties, about guys who go to these parties they don't even pay to go in. They just hang out in the hallway and wait for the bigger women to get out and then try to score with them. Next clip. Why do you think people get together to uplift substantial women in our society and the workplace, if not also in relationships based on acceptance? When I think of the perfect relationship, I think of a man and woman who were volcanologists. They both studied volcanoes. They met on a volcano and traveled the world together studying volcanoes. And they died together during an eruption. Someone could have said, "This isn't healthy, you'd live longer if you married some other guy," and they wouldn't have been with the person they were meant for. She says, "Now I want to get to a statement you made in your video that actually kind of disturbed me. You were talking about BBWs who take pictures of themselves eating or wearing sexy lingerie as evidence of their self-worth. Really? It sounds to me like what you're referring to are those supersized BBWs who have websites, or they get on webcam or do this kind of softcore porn where they're lying around in their bra and panties and they're gorging themselves on these huge amounts of food for the entertainment of the male feeders who watch them. And you take that as evidence of self-worth? Are you serious? And you honestly think they enjoy what they do? I would encourage you to take another look at that and question that, because I think you're deluding yourself. I think these women who engage in this kind of activity, I really don't think they enjoy what they do. They're doing it because it's the only way they know to survive and get by financially. And a lot of them do it for attention. Some of them might be doing it because they genuinely think they look great and feel great about themselves. But a lot of them are simply doing it for the attention they don't get in real life. This continued on the discussion boards. The whole thread is posted below. Instead of disparaging anyone, I'd like you, the viewer, to consider both of these very different strategies and decide for yourself which ones can be used against our common adversary. My perspective is that I write academic-style papers where, if you think you have the facts, you respect someone with your argument. And perhaps I neglected to consider the importance of women's organizations and the freedom to say and do as they choose without men interjecting and the freedom to talk about them. But although the fact that I am neither a big person nor a woman is a valid argument, I don't believe being a woman or a man predisposes someone to give certain arguments. And yet, I must admit, any argument that convinces people is effective. So here are some arguments you may encounter and my best responses to them. Let's call one of them fighting facts with offense. The response to something based on research and data is, why should I have to explain myself to you? The answer to a question is, you just called me a blank. Since there were no responses to my statements about size acceptance in this thread, the subject disappeared, making my point that excluding fat admirers is detrimental to size acceptance. Although everyone's entitled to their views and it's righteous for a woman to stand up for herself and for other women to support her, I believe if men were excluded from this movement, our cause would fail. There are videos attacking fat acceptance as women's lib or feminism because only women were promoting it, which, despite their strength, opens the door to very crude arguments, thinking women stand alone in this fight. Someone might be led to think this is all about equal rights in the workplace, and that's where size acceptance stops. If a woman who speaks out for big women decides to lose weight and brags about it to her friends in spite of the admiration she receives, that's no crime because conservation of beauty is absent. I would compare such a woman to Michael Jackson bleaching his skin while promoting equality for black men. If a woman fighting for equality has to change herself so she is no longer a member of that demographic, then she is not equal. When I was a young fat admirer, it was considered something new and provocative. But if I wanted to illustrate how times have changed by saying there are now teens who want to gain weight as part of their sexual awakening, is that an endorsement? No. Is it an example of fat acceptance? Yes. They accept it so much they want more of it. When you speak against things like nude modeling because you think it's wrong, you're literally excluding acceptance without asking the question, is it acceptance? As for the argument that BBW gatherings are meat markets as evidence against FAs or size acceptance, you can't dispute someone's personal experience, but you can give your own. I might have been one of the guys she described who goes to these events. And if the reason I met my soulmate is because there are more women than men, or she was treated badly before, I don't want to know. Things happen as a result of certain individuals and circumstances. But to say that certain women have had less success in relationships, and therefore a man who is interested in them is looking for desperation, a relationship based on low standards, is mistaken. A better analogy would be to say a man who finds that his ideal woman happens to be available to him, no matter what his worth, is like a guy who gets to date Marilyn Monroe. One of the questions this raises is fat admiration a fetish? I would consider this divisive. You can call anyone's personal preference a fetish. We don't need to be getting on the high horse that one preference is better than another, because that's what haters do. The reason for using the word fetish is to disparage and create division, unless it's some positive connotation like rubbing my wife's feet is my fetish. Now, this is different from having specific arguments against a practice. Let's say BDSM is harmful. What makes a statement hateful is that it casts people, which is unnecessary to the facts. Another valid argument is when I use BBW models as examples of women who are proud, not afraid to assert themselves and eat what they want. Is that endorsing porn? It's true that certain industries have a downside and destroy people's lives. I don't like that the internet is full of smut, but I still think fat is beautiful, and the fact that fat porn is as prevalent as any other kind of porn is evidence for its beauty. Whether it's distasteful or not doesn't change that. So if I say that the ads in Mode magazine, which unfortunately was a casualty of the 9/11 attacks, are more symbolic because they show big women eating popcorn instead of an apple, I'm just citing something that exists. Women who post blogs and journals and pictures give us a glimpse of a much larger number of women living in every town that we wouldn't know about. And if women are baring their stomachs as a badge of honor because our society discourages this, then it has more meaning. Supersized model Danka has a video on how she and her boyfriend met each other, which has gotten accusations from haters who don't believe their relationship is real. Some models make no mention of their weight, and that's evidence of something. Since most plus-size retailers and fashion advice tells women to downplay certain flaws, what other examples would you use? One of the most difficult arguments that's been around a long time is, what if someone weighs 1,000 pounds? I consider myself very middle of the road. I believe in the old-fashioned consensual relationship. I think women are most attractive when they are in motion. These writings are intended for intelligent women who have jobs and families. I have known supersized women who have contributed more to society than any athlete or any man I have ever known. You might as well go up to someone who likes a distinguished nose on a woman and say, what if it was so huge it covered her whole face? Big people who live their lives and have successful relationships are not freaks. I don't disparage those, but anyone who is able to do what they need to do is normal, and beauty is normal. All this is meant to demonstrate that our civility demands a different outcome. Acceptance allows everyone to live and do as they choose, which is why we will never be the nation that fitness promoters want, where people are forced into conformity. Our being civilized will not allow it. I'd encourage you to watch a video by Curvy Shrine called The Ugly Truth About Corporate Media Fat Discrimination, which presents some exclusive testimony that TV interviewers claiming to be size positive to lure in women and admirers only exist to shame and humiliate them for profit. And also presents his formula on how discrimination is the parent of admiration, community, and activism. It's posted below. Vive les grosses.